not like the answer about that, and you won't have the answer already. So nobody can compete with City in that. You have the best team in the world, and you put in the best striker on the market. No matter what it costs. No matter what it costs, you just do it. I know City, they will not like it. Nobody will like it. You ask the question, but you know the answer. But what does Liverpool? We cannot act like them. It's not possible.
We cannot act like them. This was the big words from Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool cannot act like Manchester City. They cannot create the best team in the world and then go out and buy the best striker in the world or the best midfield player in the world. The likes of Paris Saint-Germain and Newcastle now, Chelsea under Roman Abramovich, Manchester City, the big clubs in England cannot compete with them. This is the notion that we're fed. This is the opinion that we're given. And I want to gauge what you think and feel. Because on the surface, Jurgen Klopp is absolutely right. The majority of Premier League teams do not, and I'm not going to say cannot, I'm going to say do not compete with Manchester City when it comes to investment and spending in relation to creating the best team possible in the Premier League. I also want to take a look at what Mark Goldbridge said, then break this down. Make sure you're smashing like and share buttons, subscribing to the Football Terrace as well. Here is what, again, one of the biggest voices in football had to say about this on Talk Sport yesterday.
But Jurgen Klopp is absolutely spot on. I think that there is a ceiling for clubs, for Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal. There is only so far you can go when you are competing against owners who are some of the richest people on the planet. And it's anti-competitive. I agree. It's completely bitter and jealous. I would acknowledge that as well. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend that, oh, it's unfair. And, you know, but the reality is, it is unfair. It is right, unless you are Newcastle and Man City, in which case you are the dominant force. I remember Man United, you know, sort of bordering on this in the early noughties when we were winning everything and we had a lot of money and there was talk of Murdoch and Sky buying us. We would have dominated forever, but you know, it was.
I want to stop Goldbridge there as well. Listen, I get what they're both saying, but there's a couple of words they've used which I'm a little bit concerned about. Cannot compete, ceilings that we have, it is unfair. I want to break this down a little bit. Firstly, let's look at Manchester City's revenue since 2008. You can see the exponential growth in this time period. Okay, they've averaged in the last 4 years £591 million of income as a football club. Now, remember, since the season of 2011-2012, okay, so it's a decade now, owners have been limited. So no owner can input in and around more than £100 million every 2.5 to 3 years into their football club. So the majority of your income has to be through commercial deals, the sale of players, TV revenue, match day revenue. That is essentially where it stems from. So the average for Manchester City has been £591 million in this time period. Okay. Liverpool over the same time period, you can see here, the last 4 years as well, since the new TV deal money came in, Liverpool have averaged £578 million of income in that same period. So not a huge difference, a difference of £13 million between the two football clubs. But this is where this gets really interesting. So I do agree with Mark, and I do agree with Jurgen Klopp that it's hard to compete. I don't agree that you cannot compete. I do not agree that it is unfair. I believe it is a choice that your football club makes. And I'll tell you as to why. This shows you, since FFP came in play, the amount of money that has been invested by European club owners. You can see Inter Milan and AC Milan, nearly £1 billion of direct owner investment. Chelsea, £791 million. Man City, £773 million their owner has invested. You've got Arsenal there, £239 million. Liverpool down near the bottom, £124 million. You actually have Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Tottenham, whose owners have actually invested zero in the last, up until the summer of 2021, zero. So let's take a look at this again. The average in the last 10 years of owner investment per year has been £77 million from Manchester City, where Liverpool's owners have averaged £12 million of investment per year over the course of the past decade. And that, for me, where lies the difference. When you consider in the last 4 years, since the TV and commercial deals have got to their highest ever, there was only a 13 million difference. This is Liverpool's. This is Man City's. There's only a 13 million difference. But you can see on average, around 60 million pounds. Sorry, 65 million pounds more is invested each year by the Man City owners. That is where the difference lies. But then you get down to the breakup of, well, who's richer then? You can't compete with these billionaires from the Middle East. Nobody has anywhere near as much money as them. But let's take a look at that. We know the Man City owners are worth 22 billion pounds. They're worth 22 billion. Liverpool's owners, the Fenway Sports Group, are worth 9.8 billion. Now, of course, they're worth more than double. But you're talking about billionaires investing tens of millions. Billionaires versus tens of millions. Equally, Chelsea's owner, this was all Roman Abramovich, invested more money than the $22 billion net worth of City's owners, and he is only valued in 2022 at being worth 8.6 billion. So Roman Abramovich is poorer, if we want to use that term, or not as rich as the Fenway Sports Group. He's not as rich as the Sheikh. The Cronkies are worth about 6 to 7 billion pound more than him. There are many owners in the Premier League worth more money than Roman, and yet he invested more. And this is where I push back on what Mark Goldbridge said and what Klopp said. This isn't a thing of you cannot compete. This isn't an element of being unfair. This is down to your football clubs. This is down to FSG, the Glazers, the Cronkies, Enoch, whoever you support, not investing. Now, some will say, can they afford to pump in 77 million pounds per year into the club? The Cronkies are Arsenal. I want to make sure I get this number right here. The Cronkies are worth 12.9 billion, plus their family-owned Walmart. They could afford to pump 50, 60, 70 million pounds a year into Arsenal, additional money, and it would be a drop in the ocean to their families' fortunes. They are worth 12,900 million. What's 50 out of that? That's like having 12,000 pounds in the bank and spending 50 pounds a year on your football club. That's the equivalence. Fenway Sports Group, they're worth $9,800 million. Again, could they afford, if you had 9,000 pounds in your bank account, and I said to you, listen, could you give, and you had earnings and an income that was very, very big, could you afford 50 pounds of that to go in? Of course you could. Of course you could. It's not a huge amount of money for these owners. It's not a huge amount of money. No one's asking for 500 million a year. No one's asking for $1 billion a year. You've got to remember this. $1 billion is 1,000. 1,000 million. That is how much they are worth. These owners of these clubs can all afford to input money. So I understand. I think one thing Goldbridge said that was spot on is this is shrouded in jealousy. And I've seen tweets from some very prominent content creators, journalists in the last few days backing Jurgen Klopp. But I think we're only looking at this at base value. We're looking at this at base value and from the front of, yeah, we can't compete. They're super rich. By the way, Newcastle's owners are worth 580 billion, which is they're richer than all the other owners in the Prem put together. But they're limited. People keep talking about Newcastle being able to spend whatever they want. They can't. They can't. They can only spend a percentage of their income. The owners can only pump in, as we know, around between 30 to 50 million pounds per year into the football club. The same as every other owner. They have to get the commercial dealings up. They can't get the commercial dealings too high until their fan base grows. It's going to take them a lot longer than it did Chelsea and a lot longer than it did Man City because FFP has been in place from when they've been taken over. And I've said this for many, many years. This is down to all our owners and whether they are willing to invest their own money into the football clubs. We have seen Chelsea do it. We have seen City do it. You know, there's many clubs out there that have invested money into their own clubs. Paris Saint-Germain. The crazy one there is Everton, over 506 million pounds from their owners invested into their football club. So there is also the notion, as you can see, it isn't just about investing money. The club has got to be run well. And I think for me, when I look at Liverpool specifically here, this is the big issue. FSG run your club well day to day, they do. But they are just being tight with their money. If they wanted to, they could afford to invest in the club in the same way Man City's owners have. They are simply choosing not to. This is a conscious choice. It's a conscious choice. Some of the owners that we scoff at are as rich or close to being as rich as some of the people that overspend, have unlimited budgets. Roman Abramovich was poorer, or not as rich. I'll use the phrase properly again. Not as rich as the Kroenkes, not as rich as the Fenway Sports Group, but he invested more because he wanted Chelsea to be the best team possible. You look at the situation with the new owners of Chelsea, and I'll break this down because I want to get the facts right. They are worth 15.8 billion as a collective group. So they're not as wealthy as Man City's owners, but I guarantee you over the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, they invest similar amounts and spend like they do because they want Chelsea to be successful. That's the long and the short of it. The Kroenkes are worth 12.9 billion. They could invest every bit as much as Man City's owners have done. They're also married into the family that own Walmart. They could do a deal with Walmart and have the biggest shirt sponsorship deal in the history of football, pushing up Arsenal's commercial revenue by tens of millions per year, maybe even more. Why don't they do it? Because it probably isn't profitable for Walmart, and they're all about making profits. Where a lot of owners out there, and I think the Romans of this world and the Sheikhs, they're not about making profit. They're not about making a return in 10 years' time. They're just about making the sports team as good as possible. So listen, I do agree with Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool can't compete with Man City financially. But that's because they choose not to. I agree with Mark that this is shrouded in jealousy and bitterness. Where I disagree is that it isn't unfair. It's a conscious choice from the owners of our football clubs. And what I do want to see more of from the mainstream media is challenge to this. All I saw yesterday was everybody agreeing with Klopp, yeah, it's really unfair. And I think that's because it gives everybody an excuse as to why these teams are better than yours or why these teams win more than yours. And there's two things here. It's a conscious choice and it's the way your clubs run. And it's always been that way. I want your thoughts and I want your feelings. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you soon.